What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so I want to talk about the last part of the Showtime documentary Goliath. I saw part 3 today, and I did see a couple of you guys were warning me that part 3 may emotionally get to me, and it did. It did. Part 3 pretty much picked up from about 1968 until his passing in 1999. Now, before I go forward with this, overall, I thought that there probably should have been a part 4. It seems like they rushed through his retirement in 1973 all the way through his passing in 1999. They focused pretty much entirely just on his NBA career, which they should have, but they didn't really focus on a lot of other things. You know, I thought it was really incomplete. For instance, I didn't see them talk at all about his brief tenure in the ABA. What was it? The San Diego Conquistadors, I think it was, where he was a player coach briefly during the 73-74 season. I thought they should have talked a little bit more about, they talked about it, but I thought they should have talked even more in depth about his love of volleyball. They didn't talk much at all about his weightlifting, something that he enjoyed doing and did extensively in the 70s and 80s. They should have talked more about the tales of his fabled strength, and some of the things may be exaggerated with Wilt, but you know, the things with the, him drive. They did talk about his claim that he once drove across the country in 24 hours, which even I don't believe. I think he's exaggerating with that. But supposedly the time that he fought a mountain lion, as he climbed mountains and driving for, seeing how long he could drive on the road while holding his breath, and just the eccentric things that Wilt Chamberlain did. I thought they should have talked more about his life in the 80s. The fact that the Nets tried to get him to come back to play in 86 when he was 50 years old. They did talk about the book. They did talk about the book that came out in 91. And they talked about how he probably made a mistake focusing on the 20,000 women thing, which more than likely was not true. But it makes a good story. And that claim, that quote, overwhelmed the intention of the book. And that at a time when the country was plagued with the HIV virus and epidemic or pandemic, this is the wrong message to put out there toward younger people. But you got to understand that Wilt Chamberlain lived at a different time when, his prime at least, his prime was in a different time when you didn't have to worry about those types of things. Now, I think they also glossed over the declining health period of Wilt, which began around 1991, 1992. It was around 1991 when I think Wilt's heart problems started becoming more pronounced. I think that was when he, for the first time, when he was, I think, mountain climbing with friends, and he noticed that he was getting out of breath. I think at first they attributed it to him getting older. Then he was hospitalized, I think, in 91 or 92 with a irregular heartbeat. I think it was, 1996 when he was fitted with a pacemaker. And then in 1998, I remember when Wilt Chamberlain had his jersey retired by his alma mater, college, Kansas. And I remember looking at Wilt and thinking to myself, man, he looks a lot heavier. What's going on with Wilt? But I just said, well, he's getting older. Maybe he's losing some, maybe he's just putting on weight because he's getting older. But what I didn't know was that Wilt Chamberlain was suffering from heart failure. I remember reading something about he had put on something like 50 pounds between 1997 and 1998, which is true, because during those interviews with him and Bill Russell, he was a lot thinner. But he had went from like 275 to 325, and it was fluid. And they had to drain a lot of fluid from his legs and extremities. And toward the end of his life, man, he was dealing with a lot of pain. I think he went to the dentist for an injury that he suffered back in the early 1960s as a player, when Clyde Lovellette knocked his teeth back. And by that point, Wilt, who was 63 then, was dealing with a lot of pain, and he went to the dentist to have those teeth removed. And I think he said that to those privately, that was the worst pain he'd ever experienced. And Wilt was not someone who complained about pain. He didn't complain about things that were bothering him, but he kept complaining about how badly his tooth hurt. So he must was in a lot of pain. And also at that point in his life, toward the end, he was severely weakened by heart disease, to the point where this man, who had been one of the strongest human beings ever walked the earth, needed help, needed his sisters, needed friends to help him up and down the stairs. It had to be a pretty humbling experience for a man whose body always was something you could count on. And I still remember that day, October the 12th, I believe was 1999. And I was ironically playing a video game, NBA 2K, with a friend of mine named Jason. And we were over his house, and that's when it scrolled across ESPN when we cut the game off. That's when it scrolled across the screen that Wilt Chamberlain had died at age 63. And it felt so unreal, because that's not that can't be possible. Wilt Chamberlain doesn't die. He's Superman. So I wish they had went a little bit more in depth with certain things. I think it definitely should have been a part 4, at very least. But I do like that they touched on the relationship he had with Paul Arizan's granddaughter, the friendship that they had. He called her every day for the rest of her life. And I'm glad that they touched on the human side of Wilt, because I think sometimes Wilt has been reduced to being a caricature almost. He's just this, either he's this sexual deviant predator who just plowed through women like a Tasmanian devil, or, he's just this, freakish, 7-footer who was beating up on 6'4" white midgets, and would have only been JaVale McGee's butler had he been playing today. Just dumb shit like that. So I'm glad that they really humanized Wilt in this documentary. Overall, I give it a. If I had to give it a letter grade, I'd give it a A minus. I give it an A minus. The problem that I have is that I just thought that part 3 was a little bit rushed. I thought it was a little bit rushed. It would have been an A plus had it been more thorough, but I give it an A minus. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.